Hi, thanks for tuning in. So this is another one of those difficult topics that it's real easy to allow your emotions to push aside facts. Right? So, Oklahoma is 50 out of 50 in state in teacher salaries, bottom of the list. And I have a bias towards teachers. I would like to see teachers paid more. And so that's my bias. That's what I would like. Right? I would like to see teachers paid more. But then I have to deal with the facts, right? And so here are the facts. Teachers constitute the largest employment category in Oklahoma. Right? If you look at job descriptions, there's more teachers than engineers or programmers or car salesmen or whatever, right? It's the largest. And even an incremental increase in teacher salary would require a great deal of new money in the state budget. The state budget's $6.2 billion, a little over $6 billion, like $6.2 billion. Of that, about $3.5 billion is already allocated to education, right? And that would be fine if we could look at education and say, look, we're allocating more than half of our state budget to education, and look at these things that we've achieved with that, right? We can't do that, right? There is no way to measure the status of education, so since there is no measure of it, we are basically just turning over more than half of the state budget to the educational system, saying we're just going to trust you. We're not, do whatever you want to with it, and just expect it to happen again next year. Where would that ever be acceptable in any other venue, right? What if the highway department, right, came and said, yeah, give us a little over half of the budget and just trust that we will have good roads built, right? Or what if some new agencies might say, yeah, give us over half the budget and just trust that we will develop a space economy system, right? Where we'll be launching people to space out of Oklahoma. And don't expect any criteria to measure it with, right? Don't expect me to come back at any point and offer milestones that have been met or objective criteria that we can measure. Just give me that money and then just turn your back and ignore that what I'm doing with it. Right? Don't. And it would be different in two ways. The first one is this was a new expectation, right? But it's not, right? The budget control people have been asking for these type of objective measurements since at least the 70s. And so the education establishment has had 4 decades to come up with a way to have something to offer to them. Say, look, here's how we can show you that the money spent on public education is well spent, right? That there's a positive return on investment, or at least the money is spent towards outcomes that are good, making better citizens, or helping people become more enabled or living better lives. It doesn't have to be a financial, right? I'm not saying you have to show a return of financial, but just so that's the one thing, is that this call for an objective measurement has been ongoing for over 4 decades. The next thing is that every time that someone has tried to come forward with a mechanism to measure that progress, to measure the status of education, the education system has fought it tooth and nail, right? Just vehemently rejected any efforts to try and impose some level of accountability and measurement to the status of public education, not just in Oklahoma, but across the nation. So then it would also be different if, despite having no measurable criteria, if we could just look at the product of public education and say, oh no, I feel pretty good about that, right? If I were to able to, take a look at your average 18, 19-year-old kid coming out of public education in Tulsa or Oklahoma City or wherever, Edmond or Enid or wherever, and say, yeah, I am comfortable with the amount of money that's being spent, because I can, this is producing kids who are well subjected in civics and economics, and I can put them in a variety of jobs and expect them to be able to function as, but it's not the case, right? If you look at like major employers like Quick Trip, right, they have to thoroughly vet any possible candidate because they have no confidence in a public education, right? They have to have their own screening mechanisms to say, okay, it looks like despite having a public education, you have still managed to acquire the skills necessary to work at Quick Trip, right? And that is just a horrible, horrible reflection on public education in Oklahoma, right? So you've got a convergence of things here. You've got a very large percentage of the state budget, over 50% of it being allocated to education in Oklahoma. You have no mechanism to objectively measure the status or progress of education in Oklahoma. You have observable evidence that money spent on public education in Oklahoma is horribly spent, that it produces nothing of value. It is just a $3.5 billion sinkhole that the state dumps money into every year, right? And you want to increase that, right? You're saying, no. So that's just, when you put all those, and those are just facts, right? There's no opinion involved there. Those are all facts, right? And when you put those facts together, despite the fact that I personally would really like to see an increase in teacher education salaries, I don't see how it gets there. I don't see how you reach that point. Looks to me like if you're going to see an increase in teacher education or teacher salaries in Oklahoma, you're going to have to see the education system say, look, we're going to take what's already there, take that $3.5 billion out of $6.2 billion in the budget, and we want it reallocated, right? We want to shave expenses from other things and have that redirected to teacher salaries. I do not see a responsible legislature voting for new money for something that is just clearly a failure, right? Oklahoma's public education. I mean, I'm not saying that all public schools are bad. Bartlesville, Edmond, Bristow, there are lots and lots of good schools in Oklahoma. But when you look at it as a whole,